And I'm particularly excited about tonight's session that we're about to do with my new friend, Daryl Davis, who's sitting here on my left. But the biggest reason I think this conversation we're going to have is important is because for America to stay the freest country in the world, we really need to focus more on what unites us, what brings us together as individuals who come from diverse backgrounds and work together for common purpose. And there's too much these days in the world that is dividing us. The truth is that at our core, Americans want to get along with each other, and for the most part, we do get along with each other. Black, white, or brown, gay or straight, tall or short, fat or skinny, rural, urban, suburban, we all get along in our daily lives. Unfortunately, there's a lot of division that still needs to be mended, and there's a lot of problems in this pluralistic society that we have that still need to be fixed in terms of how we see one another, how we treat one another, and how we perceive one another. I certainly have, part of the reason I wanted to do this with Daryl is because I've had some interesting experiences when it comes to race and race relations, and it's always a very scary topic these days to talk about. You're afraid you'll say the wrong word the wrong way and suddenly you'll be canceled. I grew up in a lily white town in rural West Michigan, 3,500 people, about an hour north of Grand Rapids, and that was the experience I knew. It was an extremely rural place. I think the nearest African-American Daryl would have been 50 miles away in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that was our life as we knew it. A few years later, though, I became a college student at Wayne State University in Midtown Detroit, Michigan. I lived just off campus where I was demographically the minority. So I got to have a whole new experience. I rode a bus from the Cass Avenue corridor out to Southfield, Michigan for a job every day while going to school, and I was the only white guy on that bus. I had a lot of interesting conversations, and I learned a lot. It was exhilarating and thrilling and illuminating about how life really is, and what brings people together and what keeps them apart. And the office I worked in was a call center out in Southfield, and about 40% of the people in that call center were African American, about 60% were white. What brought them all together in that call center was that they were mostly working class people struggling during the Great Recession in 1982 and 83 in Detroit. A year or so later, I took over a branch office in Washington, D.C. Again, the ratio was about the same, 40% black, 60% white. The difference, though, was that everybody in the Washington office had a bachelor's degree or higher. Most people, in fact, had graduate degrees. A professional class of people, all again working in a call center. In Detroit to try to make ends meet. In Washington to try to pay for a very expensive city as they work their way up the corporate or government ladder. So I had all these amazing experiences, and then I went to Chicago and took over an office there with 80 employees, 60 white, 20 black. And I thought this was very strange because the office was located right on the border of Chicago. But I came to find out that racism did exist because my predecessor purposely avoided hiring people from the west side and south side of Chicago because he was a bigot. He did not believe that African Americans from the city could sell to white America all across the country. Because of these experiences I had, I knew that was a lie and untrue. And within 2 years, we had 300 people working in that office. About 250 of them were African American and about 50 of them were white. It was an unbelievable thrill ride. And in terms of the company, they were a little confused. They couldn't figure out what was going on in our Chicago office and how we were growing so quickly. And what I did and what our team did was just treat people with courtesy and respect that everybody wants opportunity. But I did learn that not everybody in the home office of that company liked it. It made them a little nervous. They were uncomfortable. So all these experiences taught me that racism does exist then and still does today, and differences exist. But the way to bridge those differences is through conversations. And that's why I am really thrilled to be sitting here with Daryl Davis. He's made it his life's work to break down barriers that do keep people separated. And usually people often who you would imagine never would want to ever talk to each other. Daryl is a race relations expert. He's received acclaim for his book. I love the name, Klan-Destine Relationships. That's Klan, K-L-A-N, as you will hear shortly. He also made a documentary film called Accidental Courtesy. My favorite part about Daryl's bio, though, is this, because I think anybody that has this sentence in their bio is super cool, and Daryl is. He's an international recording artist, actor, and leader of the Daryl Davis Band. I dream of having a band with my name in it, Daryl. And he's done film and television work as well. Many of you may have seen Daryl in the famous HBO show, The Wire. Daryl, I'm thrilled you're here. What's going to happen is Daryl's going to roam the stage and talk for about 20 minutes. When he's done with that, he's going to come and sit down, and we're going to pretend we have a little fire pit here and some marshmallows, and we're going to have a further chat to finish it off. Daryl, the stage is yours.
Thank you, John. Thank you all for being here. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself real quick before I get into this. I'm a professional musician. I've played in all 50 states. I have been to 62 countries around the world on 6 continents. What does that mean, other than the fact that I have a lot of frequent flyer miles and hotel points? It means, folks, that I have been exposed to a wide variety of skin colors, ethnicities, religions, cultures, belief systems, etc. And all of that has shaped who I have become. And I can tell you something. The greatest weapon known to man to mitigate or even eradicate contention is the least expensive weapon that we have. And yet it's free. And yet it remains the most underused tool. It's called conversation. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting, they're talking. It's when the conversation ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep the conversation going. Now, what did I learn from all this travel? I'll tell you exactly what I learned. I've learned that no matter how far I go from our country, the United States, or even Memphis, Tennessee, whether it's right next door to Canada, or right next door to Mexico, or halfway around the globe, no matter how different the people may be that I encounter, perhaps they don't look like I do, they don't speak my language or worship as I do, I always conclude one thing, that we all are human beings. And as such, every human being, no matter how close, how far away, want these 5 core values in their lives. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be respected. We all want to be heard. We want to be treated fairly and truthfully. And we want the same things for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values, or any of those 5 values, when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation or in a society or culture in which we're unfamiliar or uncomfortable, I will guarantee you that your navigation of that society, that situation, that culture will be much more smooth and much more positive. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use extreme communication to show you how powerful communication is. So what do I spend my time doing in between gigs? Well, here's one example. I've been doing this now for 41 years. Here's an example from 30 years ago. That's in Maryland at a KKK rally. I went and talked to these people. This is almost 8 years ago in Missouri. There were more Klan people there. When the rally is over, they all go to the picnic table and get food and beverages, etc. They always leave some Klansmen there to watch the cross because it's going to topple over and they don't want anything to get sparks to catch anything on fire. So they stand there and guard the cross and put out the fire when it falls down. What do I do at these Klan rallies? Like I said, I engage in conversation. I am a firm believer that a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. So I'm going to show you a quick snapshot of a rally that I was at. CNN asked me if they could do a story on me. I said, sure. So they wanted to know when was the next time I was going to a rally. I said, well, I'll call you next time. So I did, and I called them. They followed me 2 hours up to this rally, and they said to me, do you think the leader, the Imperial Wizard there, will talk to us? I said, I'll do better than that. When the rally is over, I'll speak to Mr. Kelly, and I'll get him to come back to my house, and you can interview the head of the Ku Klux Klan inside a black man's house. They're like, whoa, okay. So they filmed the rally. When the thing was over, I spoke with him, and he came back to my house and sat down and talked with me, and CNN. I want to show you just a quick clip of that rally from CNN. Listen to what Mr. Kelly has to say.
Davis is one of the few African Americans you will ever find attending a KKK rally. More than attending, he is welcome.
I got more respect for that black man than I do you white niggers out there.
Has friendship transcended the color barrier? Listen to Kelly at a Klan rally.
I will follow that man to hell and back because I believe in what he stands for and he believes in what I stand for. A lot of times we don't agree with everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me. And I'll respect him to sit down and listen to him.
The strange relationship of a KKK wizard and his black buddy. In Washington, I'm Carl Rochelle, CNN Sunday Morning.
Okay, you heard the Klan leader say that he respected me. What's that all about? I'm a black guy, he's in the Klan. But he named three of those 5 core values that I gave you. I told you everybody wants to be loved, they want to be respected, they want to be heard, they want to be treated fairly and truthfully, and they want the same things for their family as we want for ours. I would see him many times. I would invite him down to my house to interview him, talk with him, get to know him, and I always applied those values. He said, we may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. Those were his words. If you don't take anything else home with you tonight, take those words home and apply them when you find yourself in an adversarial situation. In fact, let's take race off the table for a second. Like I said, I'm going to use extreme examples, right? How much more extreme can you get than a black man and a Klansman, all right? So let's take race off the table. There are a lot of hot topics out here. Abortion, nuclear weapons, global warming, the last presidential election, the upcoming presidential election, the war between Russia and Ukraine, or the war in the Middle East. These are all hot topic buttons, right? You're on one side, somebody else is on the other side. Apply those values, and that way you can have a civil conversation and learn about why that person believes the way they do, and they can learn about why you believe the way you do, and one of y'all just might change your mind. So he named 3 of those values. He said that I respected him. That's one. Now understand something. I'm not a racist. I'm not a separatist, a supremacist, a nationalist. I'm none of those things. I did not respect what Mr. Kelly had to say. I'm going to say that again to be clear with you. I did not respect what Mr. Kelly had to say. I respected his right to say it. You understand the difference, right? Okay, and that's what Freedom Fest is all about. You guys here are in the world's largest forum for free speech. Everybody is here, from lay people to experts, from A to Z and everything in between. Get to know these people. Get to know the ones that you disagree with and apply these values. He said I respected him. He said that I listened to him. That's number 2, that I allowed him to be heard, right? And he said because I respected and listened to him, he sat down and respected and listened to me. Those are his words. We may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. He named 3 values: respect, being heard or listened to, and the fact that he reciprocated it. That's fairness. Because I applied those 5 core values, not overnight, but over time, Roger Kelly began thinking about the things that I would talk with him, that I would share with him about. I did not attack him for his beliefs, even though I did not support his beliefs. I listened to him, and in turn, he listened to me. That's treating each other fairly. Over time, he began rethinking, and he decided he needed to leave the Ku Klux Klan and drop that ideology behind, okay? Because of that conversation. And when Roger Kelly left the Ku Klux Klan, he gave me his robe and hood. You laugh, but it's the same robe and hood that you saw in the video there. Okay? That's, folks, is the result of conversation, not yelling and screaming and beating each other to a pulp. That's the power of conversation. And of course, we have here what's called the hood. This is the hood, this is the mask. Members who want anonymity, they look at you don't know who they are, they peep at you through these eyelets. The mask is attached to the hood via 3 snaps and or Velcro. If they don't care that they're identified, they simply detach the mask and the face is exposed under the hood. And you saw both types in that videotape. As I said, I have been doing this now for 41 years. I've got tons of robes and hoods by active members who have left the Klan because of our conversations. Some of them come out with me and stand on stage renouncing their organization and trying to de-radicalize people who are still involved or prevent young people from going down the wrong path. So that's the power of conversation. Now, I deal with all types. Klan, neo-Nazi, you name it, I've got it. I've got tons of these flags and other things like this. So now I just gave you a snapshot of what I do. Now let me just walk you through it, step by step real quick if I may. Let me just back this up a second. There, what's going on here? This is 6 years ago in Charlottesville, Virginia. Y'all remember what happened there? The big white supremacist rally. I know all those guys who put it on. Some of them have even been in my home, and I've been in some of their homes. Nasty bunch of people. This is that day, August 12th, 2017, one of the many scenes. Somebody threw an aerosol can at this black gentleman. These guys, he picked up the aerosol can, lit a match, and sprayed it, and now he has an improvised flamethrower. These guys coming down the steps are Klansmen. You don't know that because you don't see them in their robes and hoods. I know that because I know every one of those guys. The guy in the front with the white t-shirt and the camouflage pants is the Grand Dragon for Virginia, meaning state leader for Virginia, all right? And they're trying to beat him with their Confederate battle flagpoles. He's trying to set them on fire. The Imperial Wizard, which means national leader, you don't see him in this shot. He's already come down about 12 or so paces ahead of them. So he's over here, out of the shot, walking this way. And he came down the steps. That's from a Confederate statue park. They're trying to preserve the Robert E. Lee statue or something. So the Imperial Wizard is over here. He came down while the guy was making the flamethrower. He turns around and he sees exactly what you all are looking at. He sees this guy trying to set his people on fire and so forth and so on. He pulls out a gun, a handgun, and points it at the head of this black man and shouts, "Hey, nigger." And then he lowers the gun and fires it, and the bullet goes into the gravel right here. Law enforcement had to dig it out. And then the Imperial Wizard turns and continues walking in the direction in which he was headed, right past the Charlottesville police, who are standing there like this with their green neon vests on, watching the whole thing go down. And not one of them moved. And for that reason and many other reasons that day, the mayor of Charlottesville fired the Charlottesville police chief, and rightfully so. So now Charlottesville has a new police chief. So the Imperial Wizard, I'm gonna set it up for you. He's wearing a black bandana, a blue jean vest, and black jeans. So you're gonna see him come down the steps. You'll see a puff of mist in the air. He ducks under it and comes this way. So let's take a look. Police up there in the green neon vest right there.
That was a gunshot.
Okay. One of the many scenes in Charlottesville that day. What would you do if that came to your town, wherever you're from? You can't say, oh, no, that doesn't happen in my town of Los Angeles, California, or Memphis. That's way over there in Charlottesville, those East Coast people. No, let me tell you something. Anywhere there's hate, that can happen. That can happen. And let me tell you something else. Charlottesville, I don't care where you live. Charlottesville is your city. Because if you are an American, this is your country. And therefore, every city, every American city is one of your cities. So whatever problems Charlottesville has are your problems. Okay, when New York got their trade centers taken down on 9/11, and you live out on the West Coast, that's still your problem, because New York is one of your cities if you're an American. all right? So what would you do? Well, here is the imperial wizard. You saw him in his street clothes. Here he is in his traditional Klan attire. You want to play the blame game? Okay, let's play the blame game for a second. Let's blame the black guy for trying to set people on fire. Okay, he gets some blame, shouldn't have been doing that. Let's blame those Klansmen trying to beat somebody with their battle flag poles. They should not have been doing that, they get some blame. Let's blame him for pulling out a gun and firing it. Let's blame the Charlottesville police for not doing their job for what we pay them to do to serve and protect. They were serving and protecting nobody that day. So yes, they definitely get some blame. But maybe we should blame ourselves for allowing our country to come to this point in the 21st century. This does not belong in any century, let alone the 21st. But you know, sitting around blaming people does nothing. I blame her, she blames me, we blame him. It goes around and nothing gets done. Our country, our society, can only become one of two things. One, it can become that which we sit back and watch it become, or two, it can become that which we stand up and make it become. Only you can answer this question. Do you want to sit back and see what your country becomes, or do you want to stand up and make it become what you want to see? I know my answer. I chose the latter. I want to stand up and make it become what I want to see. So what did I do? I called that guy up. I said, hey man, you and I need to get together and talk. Not Klansman to black man, but man to man. I said, your Confederate history is just as much a part of my history as my black history is a part of yours. It's all American history. You and I need to get together and explore American history together. I talked to him for about 20 minutes on the phone. He finally agreed, gave me his address. I drove an hour and a half, unarmed, by myself, to his house. I sat in his living room, KKK stuff all over the walls, portraits of Nathan Bedford Forrest, the first Grand Wizard of the KKK, and all kinds of Confederate battle flags. I sat on his couch that was covered with a Confederate battle flag blanket, right? And I listened to him and his Klanslady fiance give me a 2-hour lecture on American history from a Confederate perspective, of course. Now, some things he got right, some things he got wrong. I didn't interrupt him. Why? Because people want to be heard. I just sat back there and listened, right? But when he was done, now it's my turn. The first thing I did was I corrected him on the things that he got wrong. I know my history. But I also commended him on the things that he got right. But rather than sit there and give them a 2-hour lecture on American history from the other perspective, I had a better idea. A new museum had just opened up in Washington, D.C., called the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. It had just opened up. It was free, but very hard to get into because the lines were all over the place. You had to have tickets, so they were free tickets. So I had a connection there. I said, listen, rather than me sit here and go through 2 hours, I have a better idea. Let's set a date. I'll get some tickets. You guys come down to my house. I'll drive you into Washington, D.C., and we will go explore that museum together. They said, okay. Why? Because I showed him that respect of sitting there and listening to him, and now he's going to be fair and show me the same back. So I got the tickets, we set the date. He and his fiance came down to my house. We hung out in my living room, put them in my car, drove them down to D.C. to this museum. Here we are, the Klanslady, her fiance, this guy here, and myself walking into the world's largest Black History Museum. Notice what he has on his head. So what did we do in this museum? We looked at displays and exhibitions on slavery, on segregation, on integration. We watched video clips of blacks in the arts, blacks in music, in sports, in education, in medicine, in science, all kinds of things, right? Now you notice he is holding his fiance's hand. He's holding her. And he loves music. His favorite artist of all time is somebody who lived right here, Elvis Presley. I love Elvis Presley. I saw Elvis about 14 times. I met Elvis and I went to Elvis's funeral. I love Elvis. But Elvis did not invent rock and roll. He certainly popularized it more than anybody else. But the man who invented rock and roll was my boss. I worked for him for 32 years. the late, great Charles Edward Anderson Berry, better known to most of you as Chuck Berry. So he likes Chuck Berry music. He likes, everybody, Elvis, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, the Stones, Ted Nugent, Metallica, Elton John, anybody who plays rock music, any kind of rock music, all of their DNA goes back to Chuck Berry, all right? So he likes Chuck Berry music, and Chuck had donated one of his Cadillacs to the museum. I saw it at Chuck's house, but now it's sitting in the museum, and he wants to see the Cadillac. So we go over to another part of the museum, but before we go to another part of the museum, you notice he's holding her. Here's a picture of me working with Chuck. He's playing Johnny Be Good, getting ready to go into his famous duck walk and play that guitar solo. For those of you who are too young to know who Chuck Berry is, I'm sure you all remember the movie Back to the Future. That's the real deal right there. Okay, so we go over to the other side of the museum and we look at Chuck's car. There's his Cadillac. Now who's holding his fiance? Do you all see how fast I work? That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're in this museum for about 2.5 hours. That is not even, you can't even crack the tip of the iceberg of the vast information in that museum in 2.5 hours. Even in 2.5 months, you still will not see it all. But I figured 2.5 hours for one day is enough. Let's go. So we go outside. I give this Klans lady my cell phone camera. I go stand by the marquee for the museum, and I say, hey, come over here and pose for a picture with me. This is what he did. Totally unscripted, totally unplanned, spontaneous. That does not happen, folks, without conversation. That does not happen with cancel culture. You don't have to agree with somebody, but don't cancel them out, all right? Now, that's not the end of the story. It goes a lot deeper than that. Okay, this is 2 months shy of a year from when he pulled out that gun and Charlottesville said, hey, nigger, boom, all right? That was August of 2017. This is June of 2018. So now, within a few weeks of this picture, our trip to the museum, he's gonna marry that Klans lady fiance. Well, guess what? I've been working with them for about a year. Guess who gets invited to the Klan wedding? Right? I got invited to the Klan wedding. I said, yes, I'll go. But then it went even deeper than that because the young lady is from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And her father was too ill to go up and do his duty of escorting his daughter down the aisle and giving her away. Rather than ask one of their trusted Klansmen on the steps trying to bang somebody in the head with the Confederate battle flag pole, they asked me if I would escort her, if I would step in and do that. Conversation, folks. I said, yeah. But I said, now listen, I need to call CNN because this has never happened before. I need this documented. They trust me. They said, okay, but please tell CNN not to film the faces of my Klan members because, they could lose their jobs, et cetera. I said, I understand. He says, they can film his face, her face, my face, the preacher's face. I said, okay. So I called CNN. I said, listen, you all want to do this? They said, yeah. So they came out, and they had interviewed him a long time ago. And he had said to them, I'm going to be buried in my Klan robe and blah, blah, blah. So they ran that quote of him under this wedding clip. He got married in his backyard. So here is the clip.
As you stand in the presence of God.
This time, it was Davis giving something away. The bride.
Me and his friendship has been something really special.
She wanted me to be a part of this wedding. That's beautiful. That's a seed planted. So there you have the Klansman Imperial Wizard groom, the Klans lady bride, and the surrogate father. Folks, like I said, he's come a long ways at this point. He still had a little ways to go. But the important thing is he's going in the right direction. People don't change just overnight, do a 180. That happens on TV shows that only have an hour to solve the problem, right? It doesn't happen in real life. Change occurs incrementally. But if you're willing to put in the time and apply those 5 tools I gave you, that can be the result, folks. Thank you.
Well, now you know why Daryl's a legend, not just in terms of music, but in terms of changing people's lives. Those are just incredible stories. Tell us a little bit about where the genesis of all this came from. This is an unbelievably unique path and passion. Where was the seed planted?
Well, I'm 65 years of age, and my parents were in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I grew up as an American embassy brat, traveling all over the world, starting at the age of 3. My first exposure to school was overseas. You get assigned to a country for 2 years, you come back home here to the States, you're here for a few months, maybe a year, and you get assigned to another country abroad. So my first exposure to school was over there. My classmates, this is 1961, my classmates from Nigeria, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, Japan, anybody who had an embassy where we were assigned, all of their kids went to the same school, right? So I was in this multicultural environment. And because that was my first exposure to school, that became my baseline for what school should be. But every time I'd come home after my parents' assignment, I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And there was not the amount of diversity in the classroom back here that I had overseas. So literally, I was living about 10 years ahead of my time in the future because that multicultural scenario had yet to come to this country. It's here now, okay, but it wasn't back then in the early 1960s. So one time we came back, it was 1968. I was age 10. I was in fourth grade. I was the only, there were 2 black kids in the whole school, me in 4th grade, a little black girl in 2nd grade. The only time I ever saw her was during recess or lunchtime. So consequently, all of my friends at that school were white. And some of my guy friends were members of the Cub Scouts. They invited me to join, so I joined the Cub Scouts. We had a parade, and I was the only black participant in this parade. The streets were blocked off. There was a Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies, 4-H Club, and Boy Scouts, and whatever other organizations. Streets were blocked off. We're all marching, having fun. Everybody on the sidewalks were white, waving and cheering and, wishing us all kinds of well, until we got to a certain point in this route when suddenly, pow, I'm getting hit with bottles and soda pop cans and small debris from the street by a small group of spectators off to my right on the sidewalk. And I look to see who's throwing things, and I see this small group of people mixed in with the larger crowd. I remember it being a couple of kids, maybe a year or 2 older than me. I didn't know them, and a couple of adults who I assume were their parents. I don't know. But anyway, my first thought was, oh, those people over there don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was. And it wasn't until my den mother, my cub master, my troop leader all came running over and covered me with their own bodies and quickly escorted me out of the danger. And I kept saying, why? I didn't do anything. Why are they doing this? And all they would do is kind of shush me and rush me along, tell me to keep moving. So I kept moving. They never answered my question as to why this was happening to me. So I had no clue. And when I got home, my mom and dad, who were not at the parade, were cleaning me up, putting mercurochrome and Band-Aids on me and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what happened. And for the first time in my life, my mother and father sat me down and explained to me what racism was. Now, believe it or not, at the age of 10, I had never heard the word racism. I had no clue what they were talking about because that word and that behavior was not in my sphere. I was around people from all over the world, and they didn't treat me like that. What my parents were saying had to be wrong. And to further enforce my theory was the fact that the people who did this to me did not look any different than my fellow Scouts or my fellow Americans overseas, whether they were my little Danish or Swedish or French friends. So it had nothing to do with the color of my skin. And you see, I didn't have big brothers and sisters to learn from their experiences passed down to me. I'm an only child. My folks got it right the first time. So, I always believed my parents. But on this day, I thought my parents were lying to me. Well, I quickly found out that they weren't lying. This phenomenon called racism did exist. So I formed a question in my mind, which was, at that age, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And for the next 55 years, I've been looking for the answer to that question. And that's what has led me on this quest.
It's an amazing quest, and especially because just watching that and having lived the life I've lived, that kind of hate that is so visceral that you saw when the guy pulled the gun and fired the bullet, it's just hard to understand where that comes from, what the genesis of it is on their side. And for you to have the open heart to be able to go and talk to people that are just so filled with that hate, it awes me. But why do you think where do you think that's coming from? What do you think is the root of that we could actually do something about to help eliminate it?
Well, I mean, they're a white supremacist, a Klansman, a neo-Nazi, or whatever, any kind of person. They're not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. They come from all different walks of life. There are different reasons why they would join these kinds of organizations. My grandfather was in the Klan. My daddy was in the Klan, so I'm in the Klan. My kids are going to be in the Klan. So family tradition passed down. Other times they joined because they moved to a town that was kind of a Klan stronghold. So if you wanted to do business in that town and get along, you had to assimilate. You joined the local Chamber of Commerce, the country club, and the local KKK. Other reasons could be economic, like you take a depressed town. Some of the mining towns, for example, in Pennsylvania, where most of the miners are white people. And they go right out of high school, right to the mines. And they've been doing that for generations, right? Their families worked in the mines for hundreds of years. But now the mining company that owns the mines and hires the workers, now these miners are not racist at all. They make good money, they pay their bills, they're happy, right? But then the company gets greedy and says, you know what? We can lay off, our miners and hire some of those immigrants that just came in and just pay them that much money and save money. So they lay off these people, and now these people who know how to do nothing else but mine, they're out of a job. They can't work anything else, and the bank is knocking on the door for the mortgage or the loan or whatever, and they don't have any money. The Klan will come into a town like that and say, the blacks have the NAACP and the Jews have the ADL, and nobody stands up for the white man but the Klan. Your job's not gone, but you're gone. Some such and such has your job. Come join us, we'll get your job back. And these people who are never racist, they think, they're at wit's end. They don't know what to do. Well, my job is still there, but why aren't I there? Well, okay, give me an application, sign me up. So it happens that way as well.
Sometimes it feels, Daryl, like we're not the United States of America, but we're the disunited states of America.
The divided states of America.
Divided states of America. Bill Courtney talked earlier about the challenges with identity. I've been part of a group of people doing a lot of research on the way people process group identity in their own identity. African Americans, Latinos, Asians, whites, married, not married, with children, et cetera. I've done a deep dive on this with focus groups as well as some surveys. And one of the things that comes across is universally, black, white, brown, Democrat, Republican, Independent, people still believe in America as a pluralistic, tolerant, amazing American dream creating society. What really shocked me, particularly among Latinos, but also to some degree among African Americans in these focus groups, was they wanted their identity, what the political world would call their identity. They wanted that to be seen. But they did not want their entire being and self, their entire humanity to be defined by that one thing.
Right.
So I actually think group identity politics is a cancer in our country that we have to destroy, because it actually, the idea of diversity, there's a positive version of it, a negative version of it. What it's doing is it's dividing us and making us focus on what separates us and what creates division, rather than this beautiful thing you're doing where you're trying to understand, communicate, have the conversation, and focus on what brings people together. How can we overcome the negative aspects of group identity politics and try to, even today, this word by some is considered politically incorrect, but what we used to call the melting pot, where people came, black, brown, or white, gay or straight, tall or short, fat or skinny, new immigrant or from the Mayflower, we all come here and we work together, we get along in our daily lives, we interact with people in our workplaces, in our social lives, and in our communities that are diverse in most of America, and we all get along most of the time. It's not that there aren't problems, because there certainly are, as we're discussing here, but what can we do to try to resolve this individually and culturally?
Absolutely. And what I'm telling you is, I don't want you all to leave here and run to a KKK or neo-Nazi rally. Don't try that at home, right? But you all can do something, and I call it walking across the cafeteria. And you can do it physically, or you can do it virtually. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, you notice in a diverse city, such as Memphis, for example, you have schools or companies, and a diverse population works there. They may be working on the same project. They might even be sharing the same cubicle. But what happens at 12 noon? Everybody goes downstairs to the cafeteria, and then they self-segregate. Blacks sit with blacks, Hispanics sit with Hispanics. They just, branch off. Does that mean that they're racist? No, not at all. People tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity, right? But now, if you were to leave your little comfort zone of people and walk across the cafeteria and try to sit at one of their tables, and they say, no, you get out of here, go back to where you belong, to your table, then yes, there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. But I would say, once or twice a week, just take it upon yourself to walk across the cafeteria and sit at somebody else's table. You have a lot to learn from them, you have a lot to teach them, and in the process, I will guarantee you will most likely make a new friend. And you can do this at your workplace, at your school, wherever, in the restaurant, whatever, right? You can also do it virtually. If you have a coworker who's in another state or another town or whatever, you all do Zoom meetings, to get together. Set up an appointment with one after work, after hours, and say, hey, we've been working together on this project. I've never met you, I don't know a whole lot about you, but let's you and I get together and chat over Zoom one day after work or whatever. I want to know about you and your family and tell you about mine. Folks, this happens. Listen to me. It bothers me a great deal as an American. Don't get me wrong, I'm patriotic, I love my country, but this bothers me. We call ourselves the greatest nation on the face of this earth. I have a little trouble with that. I would say perhaps we are the greatest nation on the face of this earth technologically. After all, we, Americans, built the technology to put a man on the moon, right? We did that. And while astronaut Neil Armstrong was up there walking around talking about one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, we could talk to him live from Earth all the way to the moon via satellite radio phone, live. We built that technology. Everybody in here has a cell phone. Everybody in here has email. Type a few numbers, type a few words, hit send. You're talking to people right next door in Kentucky or across the country in California or Australia, Africa, China, wherever you want to talk. We, Americans, built that technology. How is it that we, Americans, can talk to people as far away as the moon, anywhere on the face of this earth, but yet so many of us have difficulty talking to the person who lives right next door because he or she is a different color, a different religion, a different persuasion, a different whatever? It seems to me that before we can call ourselves the greatest, perhaps our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. And once we got them both up there, then we can truly brag about how great we are, all right? Because folks, thank you. We are living in the 21st century. Like I said, that does not belong in any century, let alone the 21st. We are living in space-age times, so let's stop thinking with Stone Age minds.
How about that? So I'll close with coming back to your 5 core values that people share. When I mentioned that I started out in a small lily white town and all of the news I got about African Americans was from the news. And of course, this would have been around the time of the Detroit riots, the LA riots, and all the rest. That was the lens I had. Mm-hmm. And when I went to school in Wayne State and then eventually worked in those call centers and lived it, what I discovered was exactly what you said. Everybody wants the same things. People want to be in love. They want to have a family. They want to build a life. They want to grow in their community. So I think building those bridges through conversations is some of the greatest advice any of us could ever get. And I encourage all of us, the next time you're traveling and you're at a hotel bar or an airport bar, go sit next to the person that's different than you and strike up that conversation and do what Daryl says, because he's lived a life that is incredible that we all should be inspired and motivated by. Daryl, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And I think we have a couple more people coming on after me. When you all get done, check out Elvis. When you all get done, come down to the other side of the building on this floor and check out the band. I'm going to sit there and show you what rock and roll is all about.
I was just about to say that. You got to watch them later and see the music roll. Thank you.